And thank you for joining us here at the First Alert Desk. You're taking a look right now live outside of Atlanta City Hall, where the Cop City Coalition, opponents of the development of the Atlanta Public Safety Training Center, are standing outside of City Hall. You can see some of the individuals here getting ready to speak, and what they're expected to announce is 116,000 signatures that they've collected over the span of a few months that would demand out of city officials to put the decision of development over the Atlanta Public Safety Training Center on the ballot in the next election. Let's listen in.
The first person coming up is Mary Hooks from M for BO.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Don't today feel like it's a little something in the air? That's right. I think it smells and tastes like democracy, friends. I think that's what's in the air, because what the city of Atlanta residents have been able to achieve over these last, 75 days-ish, is historic. And like Paul has named, we've been able to collect over 116,000 signatures, y'all. 116,000 signatures. And as someone, I live in District 12, Antonio Lewis allegedly represents me. But there are many of us representing all the districts. We have signatures from all the districts. We have volunteers, you know, who canvassed in Juan's district, who canvassed in Westmoreland's district. We have many people, and we painted this city with our desire and hope that we will be able to see democracy really, direct democracy, really have a way to show up in this city like we haven't seen before. And so we are super excited to be here today. And just shout out to all of our partner organizations. Raise your hand if you out here and you collected at least one signature. Media, none of y'all ain't collect no? We'll talk about that later, media. But shout out to y'all. This victory belongs to the people. The city has already, the people in this city has already decided, y'all. The city, we have decided already. And we are saying we want this thing on the ballot, and we're excited to be able to turn these things in today. And again, shout out to the people of this city, y'all. We going for broke. Let's get it.
Thank you, Mary. Put it in perspective. Now I'm going to bring up Brittany Whaley from the Working Families Power to give us some more context. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. So we started this in June. When we started this in June, I'm with Working Families Power, first of all, and we know that as an organization, we fight every single day to ensure that our government works for our people. Yes. We work to make sure that not the elite, but everyday working class people have their voices heard and they're represented in City Hall and across our government. And so when we started this in June, we didn't have anything, and they said we couldn't do it. Right. We stood up 2 offices. We've had over 2,000 volunteer shifts. We've had people who have taken off from work so that they could make sure they collect signatures across the city, meeting people where they are. Yeah. And so it's important to name that there are organizers who have done this, there are teachers, there are the youth, there are elders, because this has been intergenerational. Yes. There are people from all walks of life who have been represented in an unprecedented heat this summer, making sure that we collect these signatures, while folks in this building in air conditioning didn't give us what we needed to make sure that we could be held to account and to a process. And so we're here today submitting our signatures and gleefully doing so because we realize that the power of the people is on full display. And so today we go from let the people decide to the people have decided. They've decided that environmental concerns won't go unnoticed. They've decided that our democracy matters and we should be a part of it. They've decided that we should have a say in how our public resources are spent. Yes. And so when you leave here today, when we go to that clerk's office, we should feel proud. And we should make sure that they know that we are in a posture letting them know that we've had over 100,000 conversations with people in Atlanta, people who love Atlanta. That is why we do this. And so we come to them today asking them and really demanding that they follow the process, and that more importantly that our voices are heard. Thank you.
All right, next I'm going to introduce John Taylor from Black Male Initiative.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. So I like gleeful, but unfortunately I can't be gleeful today.
Say more about that.
Because the reality is the folks that raised me and reared me in the social justice and civil rights movement, see, those leaders regale me in stories about how they fought Bull Connor. They explained to me how they had rolls of quarters in their pocket because they didn't know if they were going to make it home. They talked to me about how they wanted to infiltrate these infrastructures so that people that looked like us would think about us. They wanted equality and fairness. They wanted not to die in the streets. So fast forward 25 years later, and I have the burden of carrying a banner that says Stop Cop City. I have the burden of wearing a t-shirt that says Let Atlanta Decide. I have the burden of representing a group of black men that have no trust, that believe and see no fidelity in our system and our government. I have the burden of honestly saying I had hopes when our mayor was elected. See, we were there in the beginning and helped put Antonio in office. We were there in the beginning when Joyce introduced the legislation and it was a problem. See, we helped put Antonio in office. We were there working on the ground when Andre came to the MLK March and made big promises about how he was going to support our people. So I stand here today saying we need accountability. I have questions and I have concerns. When you use public resources to build a, let's be honest, militarized mini city so you can train, I'm worried. Because what does that mean to the black men and women that are over-policed in our community? What does that mean to the little black boys in hoodies on my streets? What does that mean when you pass gang legislation? So if 5 or more of us are gathered wearing the same t-shirt, we might be in trouble. What does it mean when you use hundreds of millions of dollars in resource rather than educating, supporting, driving program, creating wraparound services, developing initiatives that will support and undergird the least of us, but instead you use that money to better train an oppressive regime to control and oppress us. See, we were clear about the fact that we hit the streets and had tens of thousands of conversations because we actually wanted to know what black men, women, children thought about the situation. Without fail, they all said, we want to decide. Without fail, they all said, I don't really know what's going on. Without fail, they all said, well, do you have any information? So our canvassers and our volunteers spent much more time educating the population than just gathering signatures. But what that means, City Council and Mayor, is that you did not do your job. How dare you speak on behalf of residents in this city if you've not spoken to residents of this city? And a slight aside, I watched the videos. There were thousands of hours of public comment. We sat in some of those rooms. There were lots of residents who spoke out in opposition of this. And it's not because they don't love the police or because they want to see lawlessness in the streets. It's because they want to have a voice in the decisions that are impacting hundreds of millions of dollars of public funds, as well as the lives of every individual who will be subject to what you men and women learn in your uniforms in your pretty mini city.
That's right. That's right.
I don't care if you call it Cop City or a tactical training facility. What I call it is a militarized facility that will teach you to better suppress the people.
That's right. That's right.
And if that's what you want to spend your money on, come spend some days on the ground with Black Male Initiative Fund.
Come on.
Come out here on these doors with us and talk to these people on these streets. We can show you how to better use your resource.
Right. Right.
This is a mandate. This is a message. We give you a mission. Mayor and council, you must and will do better.
Thank you for that. Like John said, every single one of these over 100,000 signatures is a human person who lives in the city of Atlanta who has something to say. And I'm going to bring up two of these people now, Helena and Deborah, who are super volunteers that have been helping us all summer long in this blazing heat.
So 7 days a week, I carried this sign. It might have been on the Beltline or at the Carter Center Market, and people, it surprised me, people from every single background imaginable signed. People I would look at and would, if in my head I'd go, oh, they're not going to, but they would come up and sign. I even had at least 24 pro-Cop City people sign because they felt like they wanted it to be a democratic decision. But there was one man I want to talk about. This was right after the whole signature decision of comparing from, you know, how you wrote in 98-degree heat versus when you were maybe getting your driver's license. And he was a guy that walked by me on Edgewood Avenue where I live, and I had this sign, and his hand was shaking. He was clearly either had Parkinson's, I don't know what. And he stopped me and he said, I want to sign. I haven't signed yet. And I held the petition for him, and with this very, very, very shaky hand, he signed. And when he was done, he pointed to it and he said, see, they're not going to believe this was my signature. And that stinks. That's not fair. And for what I've seen from everyone I spoke to is people just want a fair vote. And, you know, I walk with people after they sign and I ask them, why did you sign? And there's a myriad of reasons, but the underlying theme is we want this to be brought to a vote. That's all I have to say.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. That sounded good. So my name is Helena Herring, and I've been volunteering, collecting signatures, and I just want to share a little bit about that experience. I live in Midtown. It's a little part of Midtown they call Old Midtown, sandwiched between the Home Depot and Monroe. And I live with 3 generations. I live with my dad, who's here today, holding my pocketbook, my husband, my sister, her husband, and my 4-year-old kid. And I want to tell y'all that our family's commitment to this effort has been serious and ongoing. It took all of us to make this happen. And here's what we did. We hosted canvasses at our house on almost every Saturday in July and August, and volunteers from Midtown and Virginia Highlands and Old Fourth Ward came to my backyard, got trained, took their clipboards, and went out into that neighborhood. And so this is District 6 with Alex Wan, who is my representative, and District 2 with Amir Faruqi, and we talked to people who lived in those neighborhoods. And one thing that was so striking to me about who was doing the work to collect these signatures is over the summer we had about 60 volunteers, right? We heard about the 2,000, so 60 of them were in Midtown, and over half of the people that came to my house to go talk to our neighbors had never canvassed before for anything. This movement is broad and it is deep and it is activating people who have not been political before in their life because it is about a vision for what kind of city we want to live in. And I want to share with y'all the commitment that I made when I got my first packet from Scarlett of petition pages. Our little neighborhood is 5 streets. Lakeview, St. Charles, Greenwood, Monroe Circle, and Seal Place. And I wanted to knock on every single door of my neighbors who I know and in the community with and give them the chance to say, what do you think? And to have a real conversation with them. And I knew that some of my neighbors were going to tell me no and be for real about it. But I wanted to have that conversation with every single one of my neighbors because that is the moment we are in this city. It is okay to be in community and in conflict. And what we need in this moment is a way to figure out what we're going to do, and that petition is that. It is a chance for everybody to get a say, and most of my neighbors signed it. Wow. Right? Like, people who did not know about Cop City and heard about it from me for the first time said, they're spending how much money on what? And they signed it. They said we should get to say, right? We as citizens should get a say about how our money gets spent. And that is what this is about. Thank y'all. Thank you.
Imagine talking to people. It works. I want to bring up Alberto Ferragino from CASA.
¿Se puede? ¡Sí se puede! ¡Sí se puede! Good morning, all. My name is Alberto. I'm lead organizer with CASA. And like our partners here, we are an organization that focuses on building people power, where we collectively organize every day with our Black, Latina, Afro, descendant, indigenous, and immigrant communities to transform our way of living here in Georgia, right? To ensure that every community member has their dreams, their needs, and their aspirations fully met, and we strive for that justice and full liberation. And it is clear to us over the past 2 months that Cop City is not and will never be part of that vision for liberation. Yes. That's right. That's right. If you were to look at the 11-4 City Council vote, you would think that Atlantans have okayed this project, but that is far from the truth, because over 115,000 Atlantans have told us that they are joining their voice in opposition to the construction of this militarized facility. That they are saying that as Atlantans, this is not where our values are at. The truth is there's a huge disconnect between the City Council and the rest of Atlanta. Instead of building a cop city, people in the streets every day have been telling us, let's build a people's city. Yes. Let's build a teacher's city. A city where we're investing in education, in our teachers, in our students. Let's build an immigrant city, a city that invests in resources for our immigrant communities. Yes. Let's build a city that shelters our unhoused neighbors. Every day we have heard from Atlantans who know what we should be doing with those $90 million and where they are needed to best support our community. CASA have joined in this moment, in this movement for Black and Brown liberation, to ensure that with over 116,000 petitions, we have secured our right to vote on this issue. Now it's time for the City Council to honor their commitment for their constituent signatures, and it's time to let us decide. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. It sounds like the people of Atlanta have decided. And I want to bring somebody up from the Weelani Coalition to give a statement. Or maybe not that. Oh, Paul.
No, she got she had an allergic reaction.
But do you want me to read the statement instead?
Yes, please.
Do you have it?
No, let's go to Kamal.
Okay. I'm going to bring up Kamal Franklin from Community Movement Builders, who's right behind me.
We are here today because Manuel Tortuguita Teran cannot be here. We're here today because forest defenders are charged with domestic terrorism. We're here today because the movement has been charged with RICO racketeering. We're here today because the city of Atlanta the county of both DeKalb and Fulton and the state of Georgia have joined together to stop a movement born out of fighting against police violence and police abuse in our community. They have terrorized our movement. They've tried to break up our movement at every turn and twist in which we've exercised our rights to the so-called democratic process. Their response has been to try to put us down. But this movement will not be put down. What you see behind you is an expression of the possibilities of what Atlanta can be. What you see behind you is an attempt to rally people all over this city, more people that voted for Mayor Dickens in the last election, more people that voted in the entire mayor election.
My God.
Think about what's had to happen in order to get these signatures in place to give them in to the city clerk's office. This is an opportunity, not for the city of Atlanta, not for the politicians for Atlanta, but for the people to make decisions and choices about how resources will be spent. No more money for gentrification. No more money for poor education. No more money to drive out our communities and jail people. No more money for jails and prisons, but money for the people. So we're here today to get these signatures in, because we're here to organize for the people. And when we say let the people decide, we mean let the people decide. This won't be our last day out here. We know there's going to be different tactics and strategies that will keep this movement going for months and years to come. This movement is not only about stopping Cop City, but this movement is about ending the Atlanta way. No more backroom deals. No more making decisions without the people, because today we're here to say, let the people decide.
Thank you. I think y'all heard what I heard. Atlanta wants to invest in Atlanta. I'm going to bring up Kurt Kofer, the Referendum Coalition General Counsel, to give us some information.
So when we finish talking here today, a group of us are going to take the petition boxes, go up to the clerk's office, and hand them in. And what it sounds like is going to happen next is it's going to kick off a weeks-long, possibly months-long process where the city is going to spend tens of thousands or maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars on top of the tens of thousands of dollars it's already spent on legal fees, making this process difficult. And before we do that, I just want to speak to the city of Atlanta and remind them it does not have to be this way. Some of you may know, some of you may not know, signing and collecting signatures is not the only way to get a referendum on the ballot. The city council could, if they wanted to, this afternoon, get together and say, hey, we might have wanted this project, but it's now obvious to us that there are huge populations of people who voted for us, who worked for us to get elected, who want to hear about this issue, and we could just go ahead and put this referendum, whatever we think about it, on the ballot. They could end this, they could waste the time, and they could save the time and money that's about to be spent, and they could let the people be heard. But it doesn't sound like they're going to do that, which to me seems like for an obvious reason. They have now realized that the majority of Atlantans, the majority of people who put them in office, don't want Cop City, and they're going to lose if they put it to the ballot. So instead they've chosen to fight. And if they're going to fight, and if they're going to waste months and they're going to waste money, then they need to provide us with some assurances. They have not made clear how this verification process is going to work. One thing they have made clear is that they intend to match signatures, and that is a process that is incredibly fraught with errors because people are not well trained to determine signatures. It's not well trained what the threshold is or what the standard they're going to use to decide. And so there's a possibility that they're going to try to invalidate huge numbers of signatures when they can't easily or they can't perfectly match it to the city's rolls. That's not appropriate. It's not an appropriate standard, but it is the reason why we collected tens of thousands of extra signatures just in case. What we need from the city is a commitment that they understand that that process is fraught, and they understand that the purpose of this stage in the process is simply to see, are we letting people decide? They may come back with some arguments about how they need to protect the integrity of the process, but remember, when this referendum finally gets on the ballot, that will be a real election with all of the protections of the democratic process. There'll be signature verification, you'll bring your voter ID, all of the requirements that a lot of the city council have spoken out at being too onerous on the voters will happen at the election. All they need to decide now is should they let the people hear, be heard, and that's a different standard. Last thing I'd like to touch on and direct with the city has not yet committed to any form of cure process for signatures, much less a robust cure process. For those who are not familiar, if they say, hey, we can't quite figure out if this signature matches, we can't identify this voter, we have their address, maybe the address doesn't match the record, whatever reason they give, there should be an opportunity for the coalition to take those signatures, go try to find those voters, and give those voters an opportunity to vote. Now that is a process that is specifically contemplated in Georgia law for elections, and that process was drafted by the GOP, and many members of the city council at that time said, this cure process is way too restrictive. This cure process is suppressing the vote. But they haven't even committed yet to using that narrow cure process. What they should do instead is they should have a rolling process. They should say as soon as we're rejecting a signature, that day the coalition is getting it and has the entire time until the end of their review period to go out and find these votes. The city of Atlanta should be a beacon of democracy and a beacon of voting rights, and this is an opportunity for the city council to stand up for what they have stated that they believe in. Thank you.
We're going to take a few questions. So do we have any questions?
This is probably for your legal counsel. I'm curious, what is your understanding of the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals decision that sided with the city and look back on the extended timeline? What does that mean for signatures that were collected after? Do you have any idea of how that impacts things?
Well, the decision is not a model of clarity. It's essentially one sentence that says that a stay has been granted. If you've reviewed the briefing, a lot of what that briefing is about is the question of whether or not how NASA residents can participate in the process. But the effect of that stay leaves ambiguous what happens with the fact that there was an extension to turn in signatures. We think we have a very strong argument that since the coalition was relying on a federal district court order telling us how long we had to collect signatures, that we had that period to collect signatures. But we're hoping not to have a fight with Atlanta. We've talked to Atlanta, and Atlanta's not willing to commit one way or another what their position is. If they don't do so in the next day, then we may need to go to court, and we may need to get the court to clarify. But what should absolutely not happen is that people's First Amendment expressive rights should be trampled over simply because the coalition relied on a federal court ruling to determine when to turn in those petitions.
Right on. Right on.
Well, the question, legal and for the whole group, what is the hope and what is the expectation for when the referendum is? Is it still for November? Or with the 11th decision, does it possibly get pushed to March?
As a practical matter, even before the 11th decision, the city of Atlanta has 50 days under the statute to verify. They've already indicated they may not be able to do it in time. In addition, there's a process to, there's a minimum time to turn something over to the Secretary of State to finalize a ballot. And so we think if the city of Atlanta chooses to take all of its time, then by necessity it would be pushed to the March ballot. Now again, something surprising could happen. The city council could surprise us today and say, hey, it's now obvious you've collected 100,000 signatures. Let's just go ahead and pass our own decision getting it on the ballot. We hope that there's that surprise, but we're preparing assuming that's not what's going to happen.
Going further down the line, if this does get on the ballot and the vote doesn't go in your favor, what the outcome that you desire, would you accept that? Just making sure, kind of what we're hearing today, that you're really just interested in that democratic process. Would you accept that result for this center if we're on the ballot and the voters decided, you know what, no?
So, and speaking as an election and voting rights attorney, my hope is that there is a free and fair election on the particular referendum. I think that if you lose that, that does not mean that a coalition and a movement that's pushing to make Cop City either stop Cop City or make it into a better project would cease to exist. But I turn it over to the coalition to talk about that.
Yeah, you know, we're committed to the liberation of our people. And so we're committed to a long-term struggle. And so if it does get on the ballot and the city of Atlanta says, yeah, we do want it, or no, we keep the lease, part of our work is to continue to organize, right? Because if our people at this point, with all of the murdering, with all of the RICO charges and domestic terrorism and the way in which we've seen this city show up when it comes to how it's treated its people, the excessive force. Johnny Holman was just killed on August 10th, right? So until folks in this city are clear that investing in policing is not getting us the safety that we all long for and desire, then we're going to keep organizing until we have changed the hearts and minds of our people. And so it'll be a litmus test for us, if you will. But our work is will always continue to advance the liberation agenda in this city.
Kind of running in parallel, but separate from. Do you see the coalition or a widespread effort from the group to kind of branch off and take this fight into politics in terms of when people start running up for election and campaigns to hold what people need these city officials accountable for the decisions that they've made?
Oh yes. Oh yes. We will use the people power that we have been able to organize, not just for this fight. Our memories are long. Yeah, our memories are long, honey, okay? And so I know that 2024, you know what I mean, is in a council race, but we know 2025, they should expect this body. And every year, they should expect this body, our partners, the folks who have signed this petition, to be organized to advance the interests of our people. And so they should see this as a threat. They should know it as a threat. And they should be coming to us now. The roles have shifted. They should be coming to our offices. They should be asking for our endorsement, because we literally have the numbers now to shift the way politics is done in this city.
Can I just add, it's not just that they should know it's a threat, they do know it's a threat.
Oh,
the
yeah.
reason they have been fighting every step of the way getting on this ballot is because they know we have the votes when it goes to an election. They chose to prioritize some special interests compared to what they knew to be the vast majority of people in Atlanta, because they thought they could get away with it. They thought the people weren't adequately mobilized. And the reason they're so scared and they've been fighting every step of the way is because they are shocked about what happens. They never thought that a straggly group who was standing on the land at Cop City was going to be able to organize and get 100,000 signatures. Whatever happens with Cop City, whatever happens with this referendum, this process has changed Atlanta, and it has changed the way the city council has to engage with their constituents.
We're not going to take any more questions out here, but when we get inside, you can see Paul, and he'll direct you to whoever can answer your question. But we're going to bring our petitions inside now.